welcome. My name is Sorin. I'm a cloud solution architect. I've been with Microsoft working in Bucharest for the past 12 years. My job is basically to try and help various companies, startups use our technologies to build, say, kind of artificial intelligence type systems, and also work with data processing systems like big data systems, business intelligence, and so on. So this is going to be a technical workshop about using a service that we have in the Microsoft Azure cloud called Form Recognizer to automate and streamline your forms processing. It's going to be a lot of demos. If you want to also try them yourself in this session, if you have your laptop with you, you're welcome to take one of these tickets. They will have a username and password and the URL to go to access the form recognizer, and you can actually try those things as I'm presenting them. If you don't, if you'd rather just watch me demonstrate the features, then that's fine. Okay. Okay, so what is Azure Form Recognizer? Yeah, please come in. What is Azure Form Recognizer? It's a service that is geared towards extracting the useful information from the documents. So you have a bunch of documents, forms, invoices, IDs, all sorts of documents that have been digitized in some way, and then you want to extract all the kind of information that you require in your processing data flows through things like reading the documents, reading the data, understanding the structure of the documents, understanding all sorts of bits and pieces in the documents that might be interesting to your flow. And that is where Form Recognizer comes in. It obviously uses machine learning, but you don't have to be a machine learning expert to use it. Hopefully that session today will convince you of that. Form Recognizer is actually a part of a list of services that we have that we call Azure Cognitive Services. These are basically pre-built AI. So AI that's ready to use for various types of tasks, like in the areas of vision, speech, language, and some kind of decision making, as we call them. So things like text extraction, image captioning, video indexing, facial recognition, which is kind of going away, by the way. Maybe you've heard about that. Too many potentials for misuse there. We have speech, so speaker recognition, speech to text, text to speech, those kind of useful types of scenario. Language, so this also includes the kind of GPT-3 type services that allow you to work with text. So things like sentiment analysis, intent understanding, translation, Q&A, and so on. And then we have, what we call decision type services, which are more like anomaly detection, root cause analysis, personalization, those kinds of services. Obviously, we don't have time to cover all of them. We're kind of be focusing on this form recognition one on the vision spectrum, which is Form Recognizer. The main idea here is that these are AI that's ready to use. Essentially, they are accessible through APIs. You submit your documents, your data. You can train those models. You can customize those models with your own documents to make it more accurate on the type of documents that you work with. And then you submit your documents for analysis through an API, a REST API, and then you get a bunch of JSON back. Then you can then include in your processing workflows. That's basically it. Okay. Okay, so in terms of document process automation, understanding the what's in a form in a document is part one, let's say, or maybe rather parts 1 and 2. So it will be you have to have some way of ingesting the documents, and then you want to essentially digitize them. Maybe let's assume that you have a bunch of paper documents. You want to first digitize them. Then you want to extract the useful information from those documents. That useful information is usually the content itself and also the structure of the document, right? The layout and the paragraphs and all that stuff that you want to maybe process down the line. So for that, you can use Form Recognizer, actually for both. And then if you want to enrich that document and you actually want to do some additional information, adding some additional information in that, you can use things like text analytics to analyze the actual text. Maybe you want to understand what the text is about. So you want to do maybe summarization or maybe detecting some key phrases or understanding what the document is referring to, or understanding, what kind of intent the user is transmitting. Maybe there is some sort of, that document is an email and the user wants something to do, wants you to do something. You can use AI models to understand that, those kind of things. So that's more even kind of enriching part, understanding what the document means. All right, so there's a bunch of services that you can use in this flow from Microsoft in the cognitive services space. I've mentioned a few of them. We have computer vision, which is kind of the broad document, say the image analysis service. So anything that has to do with images and video, this is a computer vision. So that is actually used by Form Recognizer itself, as you can see there. So Form Recognizer can do a few things. We'll actually see it in the demo, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this slide. And then text analytics is a separate cognitive service that allows you to do like language processing, identifying, like I said, entities, summarization, sentiment analysis, all that kind of stuff. Usually these kinds of services of document understanding are part of a larger RPA flow. So if you use RPA platforms, so if you want to integrate this in an RPA platform, we are pretty much integrated into the biggest ones. So UiPath has a Form Recognizer plugin in their marketplace. They actually have quite a lot of documentation on the left side about everything that you can do with our service. So if you use RPA, you can actually, UiPath's RPA, you can actually use our service as part of that. If you use, for instance, Microsoft Power Automate, which is basically our own kind of citizen RPA type solution, which looks something like this. Obviously, that also has a connector, and you will have some sort of option to analyze documents, and you can extract information from forms, and then you can process them as you need, right? Obviously, since it has a REST API, you can also integrate it in your own custom workflows as well. Okay, so there's some resources. I'm going to get to the hands-on part in a bit. So yeah, this is, we have something called Intelligence Studio, which we'll see in a bit, and then we have some documentation about it, and also obviously the pricing. Okay, so again, if someone wants to bring up their laptop and try this as I'm doing it on their own laptop, all you need is the laptop and the actual internet access. Hopefully you haven't shut the door, because apparently that cuts off our internet. But essentially, we have two links, and then we're going to start exploring the features of the service, right? So no more slides. The rest of the talk is like hands-on. Okay. This is going to be a bit of a challenge because I have a mic and also the mouse, but we should make the best of it. Okay, so this is what's called the Form Recognizer Studio. This is the web-based interface to interact with Form Recognizer, to train your models, to test them, to get the code, for instance, to submit the information and so on. So this is this basically URL. If you search for it, also you'll find it's basically Form Recognizer Applied AI Azure.com. Okay, so you have this kind of information, and it kind of shows you everything that that the service can do. Essentially, it has three types of things that you can do. You can do analysis of document, which basically means trying to understand the what's in the document, so the text and the layout, using a pre-built model. So this is something that's out of the box. You just submit your documents, and it will do it. We'll test it in a bit. Then there are some pre-built models for some specific types of documents. So you have something like invoices, receipts, business cards, identity documents, health insurance, and then some US-based one like W-2, which is a more of a employee type of form in the US. That's in the pre-built ones. And probably the most interesting one, which is most likely what you'll end up using in a real project, is the custom models, where essentially you can supply your own examples of documents that you use in your flow to make the service understand what it is you're actually looking for in those types of documents, right? And those are of two types. We'll see that in a bit. Okay. So okay, so let's try the first one, for instance. Let's do the read one. Okay, I'm actually on the wrong subscription. Sorry about that. Let me set up really quickly. Okay. Can you see the font? Should I make it bigger? Out there in the back? Bigger? Okay. Hang on. This may be a bit less. How about that? Okay, I could also do that. I can also do this. Does that help? Gives you a seizure? Okay. So okay, so let's try some of these services. Now it's a little bit, maybe the page is not optimized for this, but essentially, okay, let's try the read one, right? So essentially the first thing, oh, wow, I'm gonna have to do a little bit of control minus here. Okay, just a little bit. So in order to use this, basically the service is a service inside the Microsoft Azure platform. If you've never seen the Microsoft Azure portal, this is what it looks like. So you have all sorts of resources in the cloud. I have what's called a resource group, which is kind of like a folder. And in this folder, I have a form recognizer service, right? I've already created one. So the first step, if you look at our documentation, is to create one such service in your Azure subscription. You can get a free one, by the way, so you can just sign up for the Microsoft Azure Cloud and get a free subscription, and then you can create it. So obviously, this is already created. I'm not going to spend time doing that. So I have this service, and I'm going to say I'm going to use this service. So this is my Azure subscription. Resource group, again, it's kind of a folder in Azure. It's like you can group together multiple services, and I want to use this particular form recognizer service. I can also create one on the fly if I want to, right? So I'm not going to do that. I'm just saying I'm going to use this one. Okay, so I have some samples here. It's going to be a bit of a challenge. Maybe do F11. Okay. So the read basically just reads the document and the paragraphs from the document. So if I'm looking at this document, I'm going to have to make it a lot bigger. But you have some examples here. With this is basically a medical document, like an article about COVID. And if I do analyze, this is going to submit this document to an API. Once again, this is a pre-built model. I didn't have to train anything so far. And it just gives you this kind of, wow, this is going to be hard to, maybe something like this. So essentially, this is like standard OCR, right? It also does ICR, so you can also detect handwritten text. So essentially, this is the text that is, as you can see, maybe there is the content, and then there is also information about the location within the document, right? So it's just a kind of very, very simple localization of the content in this particular document. It's like one-page document, and we have all these paragraphs over on the right with everything that we have, everything that the service has detected, right? So this is quite simple. Obviously, this can be used for very, very simple cases. If you just need to read a document, maybe you want to understand the layout of the document. So if you have something that's a bit more complicated, let's say maybe I'll just take this one for instance, which is kind of a note. This is part of I guess it's a earnings report of a company. If I do analyze here, so it will actually analyze all the text. As you can see, we have all these bits of text, just like before. We have all the paragraphs, and then we also have tables, right? So we have the structure of the documents contain tables. So these tables have, you know, headers and lines and so on. So all of this stuff is then submitted as part of JSON. So you're going to get a bunch of JSON back. This is going to be really hard to see, so I'm just going to paste it maybe somewhere else. So as you can see, the result is actually quite large with the default settings, but basically you have every single word that comes in, and then at some point you're also going to have the lines, you're going to have the locations, the spans, and then you have all these tables. I'm not sure if this is visible or not. I'm going to try to zoom in, but essentially you have this table in the document. It has 9 rows and 4 columns, and in each row it has some text and so on, right? So it basically destructures the document so you can actually act on it with your machine process, right? Okay, so once again, also a pre-built service, right? Nothing to do except submit the user, the document. Speaking of submissions, since we're on it here, so you also have a kind of a code tab. So I'm going to get the text as well, because it's really hard to see here. So if you go to the code tab, Okay, so in the code tab, you will have a code sample. That's how you can actually use this. So this is Python. Uh, Basically, you have an endpoint that you can get from the portal and a key, kind of an authentication key. And then you can submit a specific document. You can submit a document that's on the web with a URL, or you can also just post the document as a kind of a form data type of post, right? So you can just binarize the document and send it as part of the request. Right, so in this case, the Python library uses some of our packages. So you just do this begin analyze. Essentially, it's asynchronous, so you just have to wait for the result. There is a way to also use async await. But basically, this is kind of what the code looks like in Python. If you don't use Python, if you use something else, there is a link here in the documentation that will take you straight to the documentation for the SDK. So over on the left side, we have the Python SDK, but we also have C#, Java, JavaScript, and then just a REST API that you can use from any language, right? Okay, so so this is layout. So we will give you things like paragraphs, locations, tables, pages. So we will actually break down all the pages and so on. So all of this stuff, and it will actually recognize tables that span across pages. So if you have like a very long table that spans like 3 pages, you will read it as a single table. Okay. Then there's a bunch of stuff that you can get in terms of like key value pairs. So there is kind of a general document analysis where you have like a random document. I think it's very similar to the previous one actually. And if I do analyze on this document, it will give you this kind of, it will try to identify these kinds of keys and values, so pairs in the document based on what it can understand from this document. So obviously this document is quite hard to see. I'm going to do a lot of zoom in, so something like this. So you can have something like commission file number, right? So this is a specific value for this key, commission file number. There is a IRS ID here. There's a bunch of stuff here that you can have. You can actually try this, for instance, with your Romanian ID, and you can see it will actually detect like name, last name, address, and so on will be detected as key value pairs, right? So you will have these key value pairs over on the right side. I can't really drag this more to the left, sorry. But basically, all of these values will be taken, and you will have this kind of key value pairs that the system can detect without any training, right? So without any custom training. Okay. Then there's a pre-built models for some specific types of forms. So we have trained some models for things like invoices, receipts, business cards, and so on. So obviously, when you make the submission to with the document, you say, I want to use the invoice model in the API, and this is basically like an invoice, right? It doesn't show very well, but basically factura. Okay, and you will have all the fields, you will have everything there. And then you do analyze, and you will get very similar to the general analysis and the layout. So you will get tables and key value pairs and so on. But the model is a bit more specific. So it's kind of specifically trained to look for this kind of layout, right? Like it's not a general document, it's more of a specific kind of layout that invoices usually follow, right? So you have like the header, you have like the who are you billing to, and so on, right? They don't need to always be in the same place, but it can generally detect when there is the where should everything go, right? So you'll have like amount, billing addresses, you'll have sales tax, a bunch of stuff in there, right? So all of this stuff is being read, and obviously will be part of the JSON when you analyze it. Okay, so this is pre-built. For invoices, you can also do it for receipts. So if you have like a bon, right? So let's take one that is a bit more, something like this, right? You have your cab fare or whatever. You have a receipt. Once again, it will do the same things. Yeah. We don't have pre-built for Inștiințarea enough. We are working on building a pre-built one for Somație. And poprire de conturi. Okay, so all right, so this is like a receipt. You will actually look for things like that are normally in a receipt, like the vendor and the sum and the date and the subtotal tax and so on. Once again, it will give you kind of the same fields as before, except the model is a bit more tailored for receipt type information. There's for business cards. Not sure if that's all that useful. I'm not sure if business cards are even a thing anymore all that much. Maybe not, maybe in other places. But yeah, this will be like business card, and we'll try to identify the information in the business card. This is not that wow, but yeah, okay, there's one. We have some identity documents, usually, so obviously these are fake, right? So GDPR and all that stuff, but you can run identity cards, and you will try to look for the things that normally are present in such a thing. Obviously, US ones, they have the driver's license that also act as ID cards. They don't really have ID cards, but you can try with other languages. You can all try with some other stuff as well. So this is the kind of a template for a Malaysian driver's license as well. Then there's a few ones that are more like US-centric. I'm not sure if you're interested in W-2 and employment documents for the US. There's some health insurance. There's also some vaccination cards that are actually not necessarily, sorry, they're not Romanian ones. They're like also US ones. And this is like limited access so far. Maybe it's not that relevant at this point. Okay, so that's kind of, yeah. Right. So can we get some like maybe a confidence level or something? I'm pretty sure this is right. So if I analyze like this one, for instance, I'm not sure if that was visible. Maybe it was too small to see. There is a confidence level. So every bit of identified information will have a confidence level, and then you can set maybe your threshold if you say that you want to trust that information or not. Okay, so this is kind of throughout the service. Everything that it analyzes gives you this confidence level. Okay, so maybe the most interesting part, which is kind of the rest of the talk is going to be about, is how do you build your own custom model, right? So maybe those pre-built ones are too general for you and don't really do a good job, but you have your înștiințare enough that you need to read quite well. And the main idea here is that you can build your own custom model, right? So you build your own custom model by giving it examples to learn from. Right? So this is kind of how machine learning works. You don't tell it what to do, you give it examples to learn from. So that's how you build a custom model. You click on this custom model. There are two types of custom models. We have a custom form for documents that kind of follow a specific layout. So înștiințarea enough would be an example, right? You have like this kind of fields and so on, maybe. I haven't gotten one for a while. Okay. But like also the declarația unică is the same thing, right? There is a form. Okay, so you have this kind of template that you follow, and this will actually help the model if you actually tell it, okay, these are the sections that I'm interested in, and this is what I'm trying to pick up. And we also have neural models, which are a bit more flexible in terms of the structure. They don't really require a specific structure. It can actually be quite, so this is more like a contract de chirie, right, house rental, which can actually differ, right, depending on who is writing it and what paragraphs they have and whatever, right? So this is more, it has kind of the same purpose, right? So it tries to codify a rental agreement, but the structure can differ from document to document, can be different, right? But you still want to pick up like when it starts and what is the value of the rent and those kinds of things, right? So you can actually build such a neural model. Problem right now is that the neural model is only available for English. They're going to start with new languages quite soon, but right now it's English only. So for now, we're going to do a template one, which it supports like 150 languages, including Romanian. Okay, so basically, and also this one will take more. It will actually take more samples, so you have to supply a bit more samples, and also takes maybe half an hour to train. Whereas this one, you need to have a minimum of 5 samples for documents, and it will train in usually less than a minute. Okay, so let's try and build one. I'm trying to build a template model. Template model demo something. Should I make it even bigger? Can you see it? Okay, I'll try to zoom in whenever there's something of interest, right? But basically now I'm just saying I want to create my model. So as you can see here, oops, no, you can't really see anything right anymore. Okay, I'm going to give you a seizure by the end of this talk. So essentially, you need an Azure Form Recognizer resource that I showed you in the Azure portal. You can get that, like, again, you go to the Azure portal, you say, I want to start with a free subscription, and then in that subscription, if you look into documentation, you will actually see it's basically a next process where you create this form recognizer. Okay? Or you can also create it from this studio, from this very interface. You will need a blob storage. So blob storage is our main kind of storage account in Azure. If you've used Amazon, it's like S3, so it's basically like a storage account, where we will store the training data that we want to use, and also the service will store the metadata that is required to train the model. Right? And then you need at least 5 different forms of the same type to help train your custom model. Right? So you need to give it some examples to learn from. And yeah. Okay, so continue. So like I said, it's kind of the same thing. I'm going to configure my service resource, just like before. I'm going to use the existing form recognizer service. I can also just create one from here. Give it a name. I want to put it in whatever data center, Azure data center we want to put it, and then we select the pricing tiers. It's just 2 pricing tiers, free and standard. You can look at the pricing. Basically, the free tier is actually quite capable, so you can do quite a lot with it, right? There's going to be some throttling, so you're not going to be able to submit like 100 documents per second on the free tier, but it actually does everything, so there's no feature missing. Okay, so I already have one. I'm not going to create one, and I'm just I'm just going to use this one, and now I have to supply a storage account. So in my Azure portal, in addition to the service, the form recognizer service, I also have a storage account. I've already created one. It's basically a place to store files. And I have a container. I actually have 2 containers. Containers that are more like drives, like C drive, D drive, more like a file system. And I have a folder here that is empty. So right now I don't have any files, right? So I'm just gonna go and say, I want to use this particular storage and container to store my documents and upload them and tag them and so on, right? So let's do that. I'm gonna say I want to use the storage account that I have. I can also create one from here, kind of similar thing. And I'm gonna say I'm gonna use this custom model one. I can also provide a path, like a folder path if I want to. Okay, so create. And this will create a project inside this service. So like I said, we need to give it examples to learn from. I have some examples here. They are some kind of, they're not, yeah, Factura or whatever. Yeah, this is, you know, they've been anonymized. I didn't have time to like anonymize my own, GDPR, all of that stuff. So this is kind of like a purchase order, if you want, like a PO. Okay, so they have this kind of, all of them are kind of follow similar structure, but as you can see, they are, you know, they can have different details. Some of them have multiple lines, some of them have fewer. Obviously, the content in them is different. So something like this, right? So we have something to work with. Okay, so let's try to upload those. Okay, I'm gonna put them in. Okay, so it will actually do a quick analysis, and then it will actually allow me to tag everything that I need here. So the main idea here is that I'm trying to tell Form Recognizer what I'm interested in from this document, right? So I'm going to make this a bit bigger, because otherwise it's going to be really difficult to work with. Let me hide this as well. Maybe it will give us more real estate. Okay, so essentially, let's say that I want to get some things from the header. Maybe I want to get, let's see, maybe the vendor name, the company name, the phone, right? That's as fields that I'm interested in. So to do this, essentially what I'm doing is, oh, my mouse is, okay, I can just select this text and say I want to create a new field. And this is going to be like vendor name. Right, so this is Jack Spratt for this particular example. I want to get the company name, which is Jack Rabbit Printing. And I'm going to say, and this is the company name. I also want to get their phone, right? So this is phone. This would be like vendor phone, right? Because there's multiple phones there. So something like that. I can also do tables. So for instance, I have this table section here that kind of shows me, you know, I've kind of detected some things here. And I can actually add them here. So I can actually add a table here. They can be dynamic or fixed. Essentially, if I have a given set of columns and I want variable number of rows, I'll use dynamic. So I'll say something like items, right? So this particular items, and then I can say, I can open it. Unfortunately, right now it doesn't really pick up the names of the columns. So the only way I can do this is to just put them in currently. So this will be like the details. What else do I have? I have quantity. I'll just put it like this. Okay. I'll add one more, so it should be like unit price, right? And I think there's also total. Kind of hard to do this with, okay, sorry, insert columns, okay. We need price, kind of hard to do this with just while holding the mic, okay. Insert column, and I think it's total. We can double check. Yeah, it's total. Okay. Okay, so then I have to give these examples, obviously. So if I do something like, let's see, I've kind of selected a bunch of stuff here. So I put this, like black sweats should go in there. I can add multiple rows. Okay. So things like that, right? So I can just give it the information that I need. I also give the quantity. So you need to do this for at least 5 documents, which really shouldn't take long, right? Even if you have like a very complicated document structure, should be able to do it in maybe an hour or 2 if it's really complicated, right? But basically you kind of need to give it the information and tell it where it should go in the table, right? And what do you actually want to detect. Hopefully that makes sense. I'm not going to do this for the 5 documents. So for instance, you can also do some other types of information. So you can also do, for instance, signature. So this particular document, I think, also has a signature here, right? So this is also another type of document. So another type of field that you can take. So I can do like I want to add a signature. Oops. And I say I want to get a signature. And because it's a signature, I kind of need to make a selection here. So I can say, well, this particular one is a signature. Whoops, I have multiple ones. Really shouldn't be. Oops, okay. Maybe I have something more selected there. Okay, yeah, so I can say that this particular part is the signature, right? Of the document. So this is kind of what you have. You also have selection marks. So if there are like checkboxes, right, which I don't think this one has, you can also mark them as selection marks. Obviously, you can also get like the total. So let's say maybe I want to have another one. I'm going to say this particular one should be a new field, should be the total of the invoice, right? So I can do tax and so on, right? So you need to do this for at least 5 documents. Now you probably don't want to stand around and watch me do this for 5 documents because it's boring. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go on and create one that's already pre-labeled. So I'm going to say, I'm going to do just as before, but I'm going to say this is pre-labeled. Okay, because I guess it's, right, we also want to train it and see how it works. So we're going to say, okay, this is the service as before, and I'm going to use the same storage account, but I'm going to use the other container in my storage account. So if I go and say I want to use the same storage account as before, but I want to use the custom model with labels container, this particular container, so this one has the file, so it has the JPEGs already, but it also has the metadata. So every time I label something, so someone labels things, Form Recognizer will actually save them in these labels JSON file. So everything that you do will basically be stored as a kind of a metadata file that is associated with the image that you're working on. By the way, these can be images or PDFs, so either or, right? Okay, so in this case, we have this kind of labels, and then this is the result of the OCR. So the first time if you notice, the first time I opened it, it did like a quick analyze, and it was able to do the OCR and read all the text. So that is saved there, right? So basically, this is something like someone has already done the work for me for those 5 documents, so we don't spend a ton of time. So here is, I'm just going to go and say continue. So as you can see, there's a lot more fields. There's not the entire table. So even this demo doesn't have the entire table, just have the first field, but it will actually work kind of the same way. But there are multiple fields here, right? So we have a bunch of stuff here, like merchant, phone number, website, email, right? So you can get a bunch of stuff here that you are kind of interested in. And we have this for like 5 documents, right? There's 5 documents which are, like I said, they have different. They share a structure, a same structure and layout, but they have different items and different number of rows and so on in the input. Okay, so let's say, so I've done this. I have my 5 documents. Now I can go on and train a model. So I can just go on and say, go on and train a custom model based on the template that I have. I'm going to give it a name, and I'm going to say invoice model 1. Okay. And I think I'm not allowed to make a space. Yeah, sorry. Okay, give it a description. And then you have the 2 build modes that I mentioned. You can be template or neural. Once again, template will be for these kinds of forms that you have a specific layout. It will be faster to train. You will actually pick up things with more accuracy. Whereas the neural will be slower to train. It will be maybe not as accurate, but it can actually be more generalizable to documents that have a not so strict a structure, like I mentioned, like a contract de închiriere, where you may have similar information that you're looking for, but the structure of these examples will probably be different, right? Even the font could be different, right? So even the paragraphs and so on. So choose whatever you want. Once again, neural currently is only English, but that will change quite soon. So we'll do a template because it's fast, right? So we'll do a template one. Is now training, so we go to model. So this will actually train this model. And we have a running status here. Do a refresh, and it's already done. So it's not, if you have 5 examples for these kinds of like 1-page documents, they will actually be quite fast. So we have this model already trained, and it actually gives you. So this is kind of accuracy. This is more like machine learning stuff. Usually when you have a set of data that you want to train a machine learning model with, any kind of approach involves separating your data into training and testing, training and validation. So normally what you do is you take, say, maybe 80% of your data, and you use that to train the model. And then you use the rest of the 20% left, you use it to test, right? So you basically, you want to show the model some documents that they have not seen during training. It's not seen during training, and you can then compare and understand how well the model is performing. So obviously for 5 documents, it will be like 4 documents for training, 1 for testing. So usually what it does is it tries to kind of separate this, and this is how this accuracy is compiled, right? Obviously for 5 documents is maybe not so relevant. Usually if you have a document that's longer and so on, we may actually want to supply something like 10 or 15 documents to get like to the accuracy level that you need, right? Okay, so then you can test it. We have this model, we can test it. I wish I could have like a separate document. I wish I remember to put like a separate one for testing. I'm just going to take one already, but yeah, sorry. But essentially, when you want to test, you're going to want to test with other documents, obviously. So you're going to have things like this, right? So you're going to have something that looks very similar to before, except it's going to pick up your own fields, right? So it's going to take, wow, this is going to be really hard to make out. So essentially, it's picked up all this information, and obviously, it's going to be present in the JSON, right? So all of this information should be present in the JSON that you get in the result over here, right? And it's going to be quite similar in this case. You're going to have this code that will basically. Did I copy everything? I don't think so. So this is what you'll be looking for. You'll be using if you want to integrate this with code in your flow, right? If you have a document automation flow and you want to use this model, it's basically going to be something like this, right? So it's going to be something like analyze documents either from URL or from form body. So it's like a HTTP post with a document. So there's 2 types of calls here, and you will give it like the model ID, which is like the name of the model that we gave when we trained. And then you get, all the results, and you have the name and the fields, or you have a bunch of fields in your response, and then you can take that and you can look at the value. You can also look at the confidence level, and obviously process that further down the line. Like I said, all the big ones already, the big RPA platforms already have integration with this. So if you use Power Automate, like from Microsoft, if you use UiPath RPA, they will plug in with this already. So you don't really need to write code if you don't want to. But yeah, this is how you would do it. Was there a question? No. Okay. So yeah. So essentially, this will give you the structure of the document. Usually, in a project, you will find that maybe some documents are dirty, and you will probably not hit 90%, 95% with the first 5 documents. The 5 is the minimum. But if you have like documents that are poorly scanned, or you have some things that are missing or deleted and so on, you'll probably need to supply more documents. Yeah. Right. So yes, there are some restrictions to the format of the document. It's actually in the documentation. So it's only images or PDFs, right? So there's no docs. So, I mean, I don't know why you would want to read a doc. It's already a doc, right? So it's PDFs or images. There is a maximum size per each document, which I don't remember right now, but it is in the documentation. And actually, we could try to find it. Maybe I'll find it after the talk. I think we're almost done anyway. But yeah, there are some restrictions to what kind of size and the type of documents you can use. We recommend, if you can, to use PDF, but not if you use images, then images is fine. And there is no like minimum limit on, say, the number of dots per inch or something if you're scanning them. But obviously, the better resolution you have, the better results you'll have, right? So this is more of a moving thing. Yep. Okay, so licensing model, there is actually a pricing model. If you go to Form Recognizer website, this is the main page, right? So you have a pricing link here. Okay, I'll show you very quickly. It's basically, it's based on the amount of documents that you process, right? So you have this kind of, yeah, so essentially if you use it, so the free tier is basically, you have 500 pages per month free. It's not that much, but that's the free tier. And then if you use the web or container one with the custom model, for instance, if you build a custom model, it's basically $50 per 1,000 pages, something like that. So there is no other cost. That's the only cost. There is no license to buy or something. You just pay as much as you use, right? Yeah. And then there is commitment tier. So if you know you have a lot of documents, you can actually save by buying like a commitment, and say you have like you have like 100,000 pages and so on. You can actually buy it in bulk, like the whole 100,000 pages. Yeah, but it's basically based on how many pages you process. There's no other license.
And you just need another AWT1 for the storage and everything.
You need the storage. Yeah, the storage is actually quite cheap. It's something like $20 or $30 per terabyte of storage nowadays. Don't really know, but it's not that much, right? It's below 50, right? So you need some storage, yeah, to put some documents. Actually, you need some storage for the training data. The documents that you want to analyze don't need to be stored in the cloud, right? So you put your training data in the cloud, in the storage, you train your custom model, and then you submit your document that you want to analyze to the API with that code, and you get the result back. The document doesn't need to be stored in the cloud. What else? Because I think we're almost done. So, yeah.
What about mixed form? So type it and complete it at hand. Does it can read
It can
it?
also do handwriting recognition. So you're welcome to try. If you actually have some documents, you can just open it and try it. Right. Yeah. So it will actually detect that this is handwritten, this is text, and it will analyze them both. Obviously, the results may vary based on if it's like a doctor's writing, maybe it will not be so good, or if it's like the scan is very poor and so on. Right. So the results are variable, but it can do handwriting as well. Anything more?
And for example, if you have an image on the file, and let's say you want to store that image for other analysis, is
Yes.
that also possible?
Yes, it is possible. I don't know if I have an example with an image in it, but as part of the layout the detection, it can actually detect images. So
Okay.
it's part based. If you do like detect structure on the document, it will tell you, hey, this is an image, right? And you can actually get it and save it and process
Okay,
it. Yep.
thank you.
Okay, so we're kind of out of time, I guess. Yeah. If there are any more questions, then feel free to come and ask me in person. Okay. Thank you very much for your attention. I hope to see you soon.